Deep within the heart of the Philippine jungle, the air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and ancient secrets. Tino stood before the massive balete tree, a towering monolith of wood and shadow, its roots twisted like the veins of an old, sleeping giant, buried deep in the soil of centuries. While other children feared the spirits of the wood, Tino felt only a restless boredom. He pulled back the worn rubber of his slingshot, his eyes narrowing with a cruel focus. He aimed at a delicate nest tucked deep within the protective folds of the bark. Thwack! The sound echoed like a gunshot. A jagged crack split the first glowing egg, spilling a thick, golden fluid onto the emerald moss. Thwack! Without a moment of hesitation, he fired again. The second egg shattered into 1,000 shimmering pieces. Suddenly, silence slammed into the forest. The birds stopped singing, and the wind died instantly, leaving only the sound of Tino's own shallow breathing. Tino lowered his slingshot, the weapon suddenly feeling heavy and wrong in his hands. A voice, deep and resonant as shifting tectonic plates, boomed from the deepening shadows. "Why do you destroy innocent life?" the voice demanded, vibrating through Tino's very bones. A towering figure emerged from the swirling smoke and mist, vines wrapped around its massive, muscular form like living armor, and its eyes burned with the intensity of molten gold. Tino scrambled backward, his palms scraping painfully against sharp stones and jagged roots. "I was only playing," he stammered, his voice cracking with a terror he had never known. The spirit stepped forward, the ground trembling beneath its immense weight. Each footfall sounded like a drum in the silence. "You hurt others because you think nothing matters," the spirit declared, its gaze piercing through Tino's soul. "You lack the wisdom to see the life in all things, so you shall learn from a different perspective." Tino lunged to his feet, driven by a primal instinct to survive. He sprinted toward the direction of his village, but the forest path seemed to stretch and twist against him like a living snake. The trees leaned in, their branches clawing at his clothes. As he ran, a horrific sensation washed over him. His hands began to harden and turn cold. He looked down to see his skin turning rough, gray, and scaly. He tripped near the edge of the rice field, his fingers curling into sharp, tiny claws. The world was growing larger, the grass rising up like a field of spears. He reached his family's bamboo hut, gasping for air that felt too thin for his changing lungs. He collapsed at his grandmother's feet, looking up at the woman who had raised him. "Lola, help me!" he shrieked. But the plea for mercy distorted into a high-pitched, rhythmic chirp. His body shrunk rapidly, his spine arching and snapping as he transformed into a small, fragile house lizard. He scuttled up the bamboo wall, his heart hammering like a trapped bird against his ribs. From his new vantage point high on the rafters, Tino watched his grandmother. She was weeping, her shoulders heaving with a grief that filled the small room. She reached out a trembling hand toward the spot where he had just fallen, but there was nothing left to touch. Tino wanted to call out her name, to tell her he was right there, but only a clicking sound emerged from his throat. He watched her for a long, silent moment, his tiny, lidless eyes reflecting the fading orange light of the setting sun. He realized then that he was a ghost in his own home. He saw the love in her eyes and felt the crushing weight of his own cruelty. He had destroyed life for sport, and now his own life as a boy was gone. The warmth of the hut felt cold, and the safety of the rafters felt like a prison. He was close enough to see her tears, yet miles away from her comfort. Every evening, as the shadows lengthened, the small lizard crawled down the wall, his head bowed low toward the distant, dark forest, where the balete tree stood in silent judgment. He remained there, a quiet guardian of the house, watching the village children play from the safety of the shadows. The village grew quiet as the sun set behind the mountains. The lesson of Tino etched into the wood of every home. Kindness was a debt he could no longer repay, and the forest spirit's judgment was final. He would watch, he would wait, and he would remember the golden eggs that would never hatch. The house lizard remained a silent witness, to a world he could no longer join. A small shadow in a house full of memories.